we get back to the optimal level or where we were before. Now, before the economy gets back to that level, then the loan portfolio or the loans going out from banks to these parastatos and to Kenyans will still remain low, because you pick money or you go for loans to ensure that you put it into productive activities or, of course, for consumption purposes. However, if you look at the civilians, the individuals and the corporations that we have at the moment, we have had also several other new sources of finances. Of course, for the individuals like us, where you go there and use these online systems to get specific small amounts of money for consumption purposes, like paying school fees or even meeting your basic needs. But for the business or investment side, we are not seeing that much, because we need the economy to recover to a level where we can put this money into and, of course, produce more, revive our manufacturing sector, ensure that we get new entrants into the industrial systems in this country, and this will certainly lead to the need for more money to inject into these areas. Finally, on this is the aspect of the fourth industrial revolution that I've alluded to. Economies are moving from the hard part of it to the soft, where we are now applying more technology and a lot of innovations to driving the economy towards a certain level. And that is why we are now talking about the digital economy, where we as a country should align ourselves properly, especially for the young entrants into the economy, the youth, who are more innovative than most of us, but who are malleable, who can easily fit into the digital sort of processes that we are seeing at the moment. So until we get to a full recovery from the impacts of COVID-19, we are still going to see less and less sort of amounts of money being sort of lent out to people to inject that into various economic development sectors of this country.
Okay, Dr. Exene Iraki, what's your reaction to this? Commercial banks cutting their exposure to loans, to their loan exposure to state-owned enterprises amid an increase in a default risk?
That's a very interesting question, because it follows what we have been discussing earlier about KMC. Yes. That the government parastatals are not done very well. So by extension, if you don't do very well, then people shy away from giving you money, because they think it is risk, you are taking a risk. And I want to tie that story to a story that appeared either yesterday or today in the dailies. EABL board oversubscribed by 248%. So here is EABL, East African Breweries, trying to borrow money from the public through a board, oversubscribed. Here's a story of banks shying away from lending to parastatals. And it's a question of confidence. So if public institutions are not well managed, if the lenders see risk in putting money there, they will shy away. But you can see what happens when people have some confidence in an institution. They give you the money, they are willing to lend you the money. So what we should be asking is, how do we reform public institutions, parastatals, so that people have confidence in them? The bank can lend the money to expand. The banks can lend the money to solve their problems. So this is not just a question of people banks not giving parastatals money. It's a question of telling parastatals, we don't have confidence in you. You're not very sure about what you're going to do with your money. So why do I risk the money? It is what I do nowadays. If you come and borrow me 10,000, and I'm sure you'll never give me that money, I will not give you 10,000. Nitakupatia 1,000 and inaenda tu. So it's a question of building confidence in our institutions, in our parastatals.
Right, indeed. Now, if you cannot afford to lose it... But don't ask
for 1,000 now, please.
Yeah. If you cannot afford to lose it, that's the common law I hear. The colloquial rule, if you cannot afford to lose it, don't lend it out. Now, here is, we have gotten back Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi. Sakwa, we've moved on to another topic. 382 billion shillings. That is the huge cash amount the Treasury estimates taxpayers may spend in sustaining operations of 18 cash-strapped state entities in the next 5 financial years. Now, as this happens, or as this revelation is given, we are being told that parastatals have nowhere to go as lenders shun state agencies, or rather state entities, over loan defaults. Banks Bank's net loan book to parastatals fell for 3 consecutive months to close July at 76.3 billion shillings. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is that fortunately the private sector can make a correction when we have been heading in the wrong direction. Public sector itself would not. And I can mention some parastatals that I interacted with in the course of my parliamentary work. When big parastatals like Kenya Airways, which was supposed to be private but was largely just being funded by the public,
yes,
are being given funds by Treasury, just as you sort of put in X billion or that billion and so on. They are not on the balance, discovering why it is they're making losses, insisting on internal correction so that the fund used in the retransformation of that parastatal from where it was operating badly to where it wants to go. You simply pump it. And that's what happened long ago when KCB was a parastatal institution. There was a time when nobody worth a salt would put any investment money with KCB because it was just stuck with non-performing loans from the parastatal sector. Yes. National Bank of Kenya was in the same mode. But when they moved more to private sector type operations and the lending had gone to them, lending these parastatals would then be on the balance sheet, then the balance sheet would force internal changes and discipline that the private sector uses. We take that away when we simply pump in money on the ground, and this is a very essential parastatal. It carries the name of the country, our flag, and so on. But they have a balance sheet, and people are becoming billionaires through misuse internally. And the government lending, it doesn't work very well. And I think Iraqi gave a good example of a big institution, not a parastatal one, of course, EMBL, being oversubscribed at a time when these parastatals are struggling. I think that struggle is a correction in the system by the banks and other financial players to say, hey, you're not worth your salt. You are not doing the things we think you should do to guarantee the return of our money. Our money is owed to us. We owe money to other people that we're giving you to use. So I think that's a correction that the parastatals, not collective, individually, because they're not being lent as a collective, they're being lent individually. And for banks to find, each different bank, to find a parastatal a bad customer must mean that the parastatals are not good customers. And therefore, they have to get back to their basics and say what it is they want to correct.
Absolutely.
And as I conclude, there are two components to this parastatal. There is the commercial type, which makes them borrow and return, but there is the so-called development type, which is that they are playing a role that would others not be played by others. And that is the old story justifying parastatal existence. If that is the case, then the fiscal input should play. Treasury should vote money to deal with the development operation.
Yes.
To deal with the offtakes from Northeastern and allow KMC to slaughter and process and operate profitably. Separating those roles doesn't come through because Treasury does not want to put money for that kind of thing.
All right, that is quite insightful. Thank you, Honorable Sakwa, for that. And I'd like to circle back to the issue of KQ that you have actually mentioned in yesterday's copy of the Business Daily. We were told Kenya Power holds 10 billion shillings of dead stock. It comes back to performance, and some of these entities seem to be struggling. Now we're told Kenya Power holds about 9.8 billion shillings in dead stock, the Energy Ministry has said, underlining the electricity suppliers' messy procurement programs. Dr. Iraqi, what's your reaction to this?
I think, Trix, you have spoiled my morning because of mentioning KQ.
Okay.
About maybe 15 years ago or so, I bought Kenya Airways shares.
Oh, okay.
And each was 150 shillings. Now it's worth almost very little. So I have lost a lot of money. So when you talk about it,
yes,
I feel a bit uneasy. But I think it brings in the same issue we have been discussing. How do we efficiently manage public institutions or public parastatals? Why should a monopoly like Kenya Power be making losses? Why should a monopoly like Kenya Airways be making losses?
That's the question.
So, and somebody gave a very good example a few minutes ago about KCB. The KCB was one time an almost fully government-owned entity. When it was privatized, it has done very well. Kenya Airways was one time doing very well. So once you bring very good management, once you bring very efficient management, once you let institutions run independently, they will be able to make all decisions and live with the consequences. So Kenya is a market economy. Yes. So let's remove the heart of the government in entities. And you can be sure they're going to do very well. Okay. And I'm very impressed by KCB. I can say Bodre as we talk. It is run by one of my students. And that's why I was saying earlier that there's no reason why KMC and other institutions cannot be run by my former students, and they do as well as KCB. So let's not babysit institutions that are old enough. KQ is a big institution. KMC is a big institution, and no other parastatals. So they are old enough.
Right.
You cannot keep on babysitting your kid when the kid is an adult. Let them learn their affairs, and they should be able to be successful. If they fail, they pay the consequences. Right.
And actually, I got the institutions confused. That the article I pointed out was a Kenya Power one. The one on KQ says, and I'll give this one over to you, Professor, MPs put Treasury on spot over 24 billion KQ deal. The Treasury deal to convert a 24 billion government loan to Kenya Airways into equity without parliamentary approval is the latest in a series of secret dealings leading to the nationalization of the airline.
That's a very, very, very good question. And as my colleagues have said, I think we're going back to the same conversation.
Yes.
Which is the problem, which sort of outlines the problems that our country is facing. One, and I'm going to be very short on this.
Yes.
Publicly run entities in this country are prone to the highest levels of corruption. And the web of corruption is beyond the management of these publicly publicly sort of run entities. Take an example of the parastatals that are public. And you realize that we can't make profits because those guys who benefit from the money that is injected into the parastatals are too many. And they come all the way from the highest officers all the way to the staff at the bottom.
Yes.
And you look at this, take NSSF, you've talked about KPLC and all these other entities. So number one is corruption and lack of commitment in delivering the mandate of that parastatal. Number two is the sort of the issues surrounding publicity or the publicness of these entities. We've just talked about one thing. One, we do not want militarization of the parastatals. That's perfectly okay, and I totally agree. Number two, around that is that we have people or professionals who are qualified to run these parastatals, profitably, and that nobody can take that one away. Kenyans are able to do these things. However, we've seen that until we change the way we are doing things or the way we do things in this country, we'll not be able to break out of this kind of web. Number three is what my colleagues have talked about, privatization. Right. And I do agree with that, because privatization now brings about the innovation and the creativity that, of course, Honorable Sakwa and Dr. Iraki did raise. That would be killed by the military. But then it also brings about competitiveness, efficiency, and promotes the open economy of this country, as we put it. Right. And this is why we should drive all these discussions towards privatization and get this away from the government, so that the government should not just be injecting billions of shillings into these entities. Now, that takes us back to KQ. Same thing. When you bring in the parliament and the MPs start discussing all this, there is always a force behind the whole process of who is going to benefit from the transactions that would go through such an entity. And one of the reasons why the government does not want to pull away from this public sort of parastatals is because of exactly that. They make money by creating the confusion, of course, by promoting corruption within these parastatals. And this is something that we need to take away. And again, the example of KPLC is very embarrassing. A monopoly that is feeding this economy with power.
Yes.
A monopoly that has more than 8 million clients, individuals, and a monopoly that is sort of supporting, providing industrial power to all the industries in this country, should not be making losses. And Kenya Power, or the power that we get from this country, is one of the most expensive in this world. We pay too much for hydroelectric power, solar, wind, and every other power that KenGen generates, or even the individual power producers are producing for this country. Now, the question is, why are we not able to make profits when you are the only person who is running this.
Yes.
One of the reasons, of course, is that we need to privatize KPLC. We need to bring in other competitors so that we can promote innovativeness and creativity. We need to ensure that everybody who has worked in these parastatals and within their period, money has been lost. We need to ensure that these people are taken to court, or then push them, just like I gave an example of China or Asia. Let them be locked forever, or let us bring the culture of people feeling embarrassed and even committing
on
suicide.
the sword when
so
they
that
are
exactly
outed.
Because unless you do that,
Yeah.
we'll keep on talking about the same thing year in, year out, and will not be able to make the progress that this country deserves.
Okay. Now, last but not least, Honorable Sakwa, I'd like your take on this. On one hand, we have Kenya Power holding 10 billion shillings worth of dead stock. We're told they're holding that amount of dead stock. The Energy Ministry has said, underlining the electricity suppliers' messy procurement programs. And on the other hand, we have KQ. The CEO, Alan Kilavuka, says the PS was giving us an okay to convert the KQ loan into equity. Whether the approval of Parliament was sought or not for me to answer is not for me to answer, but a National Treasury. MPs are putting Treasury on the spot over that 24 billion KQ deal. What is your take on this?
Trix, are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that the KQ story is a sad story. I want to comment quickly on both parastatals. In respect of KQ, there's been a government bailout on several occasions. And one basic question, when you bail out a company that has lost money, you should look at it and see in what way the money was lost. Were there any gainers in the losing of the money? Are there going to be any gainers in the bailout? For example, KQ had debtors on their books that they wanted that had large sums of money pending. And by bailing them out, essentially you are helping the company to pay off those debtors. And you might find that the debtors might be entities of public interest. It might be curious that the debtors are also related to power and so on. So, there are intricate questions that need to be looked at. We are using our poor taxpayers' monies to bail out parastatals that are bailing out enterprises that are public owned by people who exercise lots of power. And I think that kind of thing is a mismanagement of public resources. KPLC, by now there ought to be people in jail because they have been overcharging to make up for ways in which they have sort of leaked out the money. And that is known in the public domain. We are just acting as if it's some complicated issue. Why are they not making profit? We know that they're stealing. And why aren't we moving to do that? It's a question of allowing our institutions to operate fully and freely. The DCI ought to have moved in. The DCI ought to develop a capacity to deal with white-collar crime, if that's very sophisticated. And the DPP ought to be cooperating also so that matters can move through the judicial system. But now that can't, because the moment you begin to move, you step on other people's toes. And those are the things that we should be guarded about. That's also what we call impunity. And I think we should deal with that impunity to solve these problems.
Honorable Sakwa Bunyasi, legislator and economist. We also had Dr. Exen Iraki, senior economist, and Professor Emmanuel Mutisia, a professor in economics and development. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning, bright and early, and helping us take a look at some of the stories that are making headlines and make heads of tails and tails of the Kenyan economy and the direction we are taking. Now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more news for you here on Morning Express. Do not go too far.
This is KTN News.
Express visawasawa. Sawa na Sawa Liquid Hand Wash inapatikana katika variant tatu: original, strawberry na aloe vera. Sawa Liquid Hand Wash yenye harufu ya kuvutia, uhakikisha mikono yako inabaki kuwa laini. Bidhaa bora kutoka Pwani Oil Products Limited.
Furahia na Optiven.
Umetoa wapi gari mpya?
Optiven
wametusort. Nunua any of our value-added properties ama redeem installment ya property yako. Kwa kila malipo ya 10,000 unapata 1 entry point kwenye draw ya Furahia na Optiven promotion. Airtime kushindaniwa kila siku, holiday kila wiki, shinda ploti na gari kila mwezi na grand prize ya Mercedes-Benz C180.
14th October 2011 will always be remembered as a Rubicon crossing moment for the Kenyan Defence Forces. Kenya's intervention was a commitment by the Kenya Defence Forces to protect and defend Kenya's territorial integrity, to secure sovereignty, national interest, as well as secure peace in Somalia and the larger Horn of Africa.
You're warriors, ndio? Yes, sir. And you really shown it because you're warriors. I know your work. I know how much you've done in these operations. I know the commitment. I know the dedication. And I urge you to continue in the manner that we are doing our job.
Bank account, we could see deposits of about 63 million shillings.
Our advocates obtained a search warrant to search the premises of Dr. Salome Mulubi.
That we found 3,998,000, 2,000 shy of 4 million cash.
Stanley Mombo Amuti once banked 1.5 million shillings in cash in one day. He visited the ATM 15 times to deposit the amount in installments of 100,000 Kenya shillings, attracting the attention of detectives.
This is KTN News.
Now it's time for international news, and we start off in the region and to the neighboring Sudan. And now Monday's military coup is threatening to wreck the country's fragile transition to democracy more than 2 years after a popular uprising that ejected a longtime strongman Omar al-Bashir. The move comes after months of mounting tension between the military and civilian authorities. Hundreds of protesters are opposed to the takeover by the military and have camped on the streets holding protests. Several people have been killed by troops in what could make the situation worse. But how did Sudan get here? George Maringa interrogates.
Sudan has once again found itself at crossroads. 1 month after a failed coup attempt, the military arrested Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok on Monday, along with other civilian members of the transitional government. Sudan was last year touted as making headway in its transition to democracy, with growing momentum towards drafting a new constitution. But long-term success required just more than that, until the events of Monday threw all that into a disarray.
It is an unprecedented example of how not to do politics in this region. I think General Burhan has made a mistake, and I think the people of Sudan see it that way. And I think that the repercussions are coming.
The pro-democracy movement, which was a mix of groups including professional unions, political parties and youth groups, pushed for the ouster of Omar al-Bashir in April 2019. But it was only a partial victory, with protesters unable to push the military out of politics completely.
The problem is the military-civilian mix. The military is the only, in most of these countries, the only rational institution we have. So we need to build institutions. And institutions have to come from the people.
Until 2019, Sudan was ruled by Omar al-Bashir, a military officer who led a coup d'etat in 1989 that ousted a democratically elected government. However, since the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir in 2019, a transitional government composed of civilians and military had worked together under the leadership of Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok to move the country towards elections in 2023. The scars of the war in Darfur, nonetheless, still haunts Sudan.
If the civilian government comes in, the army is going to be held accountable for Darfur, which killed thousands and thousands upon thousands of people. And I think that's the problem. They don't want to be held accountable. And I think that there is a way through this, truth and reconciliation, getting the facts out and reconciling the military and the civilians, and getting out the pains of the people in Darfur and holding people accountable.
The military takeover threatens to derail Sudan's path to democracy, just as the country had begun to resurface after decades of autocratic rule, global isolation, and crippling economic sanctions.
I think that the Sudanese people need to sit down and say, after 50, 60 years of independence, we've had multiple coups in this country, and we need to put an end to it. The revolution brought down the army. The army has now made a counter-revolution.
Earlier this year, the government announced it would hand the former president over to the ICC, along with other officials wanted over the Darfur conflict. The former president is currently in prison in Sudan.
Dr. Hamdok, he sold President Bashir down the river for financial aid and to be taken off the list of terror in Sudan.
But now the military has declared it will rule on its own, and it is unclear whether it will make good on its promise for a free election. General Burhan has said that the transitional period will still focus on creating a civilian government and claimed that the Sudanese military will not be involved in politics.
We all know that that's just a ruse. The military goes into power, they don't want to leave. So I think it's important for the regional governments to put a lot of pressure on the government of Sudan. I think the AU's first business is to call an emergency meeting to discuss it. So what needs to be done? They need to draw up a constitutional assembly, draw up a document, send it to a referendum, create political parties, there are already political parties there, and contest for power.
George Maringa, KTN News.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has accused 3 High Court judges of changing the constitution through the back door to strip President Uhuru Kenyatta of his powers to appoint judges. The AG, in his appeal to stop 6 judges rejected by President Kenyatta from assuming office, argued that the decision by Justices George Dulu, William Musyoka, and James Wakiaga amounted to a constitutional coup by making declarations not backed by the law. Arguments are right there on your screen. The argument is an illegality with no basis in the Constitution once the Chief Justice stopped by swearing in the judges upon the lapse of the given time. The AG's appeals ruling and also the orders stripping the president of his powers to appoint judges unconstitutional. That's what the AG has said, and the Constitution has mechanisms to address the judges' woes as opposed to that ruling, and therefore he feels that the judges should have fallen back to that. Also, the judges addressing a constitutional transgression using another transgression, and this implies that no 2 wrongs can make a right. And also the AG says the High Court has no powers to go outside constitutional limits. Meanwhile, Victor Kiprono Ngeno, the man accused of swindling Kenyans while masquerading as a magistrate, has denied 9 charges leveled against him. Ngeno, who appeared before Nakuru Principal Magistrate Isaac Orenge, is accused of obtaining a total of 3.3 million shillings from different people by pretending to be a magistrate and also claiming to be a relative of devolution CS Charles Keter. Ngeno's wife, Mercy Chepkurui, was also charged alongside him as an accomplice.
This accused person, the first accused person, may be required at the Eldoret law court. So for that reason, I did not deliver the ruling today. And then the second reason is that I happen to be the plea court. I may not be able to work through the ruling, and I don't know what time I will be coming back from Eldoret. So for that reason, my ruling will be delivered on Tuesday next week.
Meanwhile, a new COVID-19 outbreak has hit parts of China, leading to a scale-up of restrictions on movement. Some parts of the capital, Beijing, have been sealed off, while northwestern regions have grounded transport and closed public venues to curb the spread of the virus. The rise in cases in China is a cause to worry for Kenyans, especially now that the country has a positivity rate of below 5%. Our health and science reporter, Beldine Walyaula, with more.
China is one of the countries struggling to contain the rising cases of COVID-19 again. The virus was first recorded in the Asian nation in 2019. However, towards the end of 2020, it had managed to reopen as the rest of the world gripped by surging deaths occasioned by the disease. But things are taking a turn for the worse for the Asian nation. Over 15 provinces are experiencing a spike in coronavirus cases, and more could be affected. This comes at a time when the country boasts of having 2 of its own homegrown vaccines, Sinopharm and Sinovac, approved by World Health Organization. It has also fully vaccinated more than 1 billion people, which is over 70% of its total population. The rising cases come days after Kenya ended a nationwide curfew that had lasted for almost 2 years. Due to China's position as Kenya's key trading ally, there's a cause for worry, especially now that flights in and out of the country are still being allowed.
Is that the coronavirus disease, which occurs in waves, continues to remain unpredictable. And therefore, that is why it is so important that we keep our guard. And keeping the guard is at 2 levels. At the personal level, which is very important, observing the public health measures, but also at the Ministry of Health level. I think the continued surveillance will remain a top priority.
Kenya at the moment is enjoying a positivity rate of 2.1%, with now 1.4 million Kenyans being fully vaccinated. The proportion of adults fully vaccinated now stands at 5.4%. Other countries like Russia are also experiencing a spike in COVID-19 cases, with the country reporting a slow uptake of Sputnik V vaccine by its own population. Beldine Walyaula, KTN News.
Now, the government needs at least 17.9 billion shillings to mitigate damages caused by the rising levels of lake waters in the country. A report by a task force appointed to look into the swollen lakes phenomenon shows that 75,000 families were displaced, while 379,000 others are still staring at imminent displacement from their homes. The reports further revealed the rate at which 12 lakes swelled, with some rising by 186%. Let's get more from KTN's Ibrahim Karanja.
The report by a task force appointed by Environment Cabinet Secretary Keriako Tobiko that worked in conjunction with a team from the United Nations Development Programme UNDP revealed that Lake Olbolosat in Nyandarua County recorded a 186.59% rise in water levels, with the lake swelling from 18.2 to 52.2 square kilometers, in a phenomenon that started in 2012. Also adversely affected was Lake Solai in Nakuru County that saw a 137.1% increase, while Lake Baringo increased by 109.29%. Lake Nakuru rose by 70.8%, as Lake Logipi, Lake Naivasha and Lake Bogoria rose by 47, 42 and 25% respectively. The Takwel Gorge Dam recorded the highest increase at 212%, leading to the displacement of 30,000 persons, with 13 schools completely submerged. 56 people lost their lives in mudslides that hit Sebit area, While Lake Victoria is not in the Rift Valley, it also recorded an increase, having a 15.14% increase, this leading to the displacement of 37,140 households, with Busia having 8,922 households, Siaya 3,250, Kisumu 13,800, Homa Bay 7,752, and Migori 3,416 households. The report further revealed that while the lakes increased in acreage, most of them reduced in depth. That task force further established that reasons for the swelling of lakes was largely due to climate change. Other reasons said to have led to the phenomenon included deforestation as well as siltation in the lakes. Geological activities have also been said to be contributors. Of the 17.9 billion shillings needed for mitigation, 2.9 billion is said to be urgent, aimed at resettling the displaced and stopping any further loss of lives or destruction of property. Ibrahim Karanja, KTN News.
Now, a Nanyuki court has slated November 24th this year to give a ruling on a case where the Loldaiga community in Laikipia sued the British Army for allegedly causing fire at Loldaiga Hills early in March this year. The British Army training units runs joint exercises with Kenyan soldiers in the northern Laikipia region where it has a base. KTN's Kimani Gituku with that story.
According to the residents, the scale of the wildfire at the conservancy is said to have lasted for at least 4 days, as thick plumes of smoke wafted to the sky. The fire destroyed approximately 12,000 acres of land at the Loldaiga Conservancy in Laikipia County in March this year, with the blame squarely falling on the British Army, who have been training in the area. The incident has been at the center of a lawsuit jointly filed by a lobby group and more than 1,000 local residents.
Justice delayed is justice denied, but we are very hopeful because out of the presentation that were done today and submission that were done today, we are hopeful that in the next 1 month, when we are anticipating the ruling, we are going to get very concrete way forward.
We are losing a lot, and these people don't offer any employment to the local people. But they are polluting our air, they are polluting our waters.
The area residents have continually encountered untold suffering since the fire incident. Some even lost their loved ones.
Ameacha watoto, mmoja wa miaka 4, mwingine wa miaka 2, na wangefaa wasome na wangefaa wakae vizuri. Na huku mahali tuliachwa hatukuwa tumestable kukaa maisha mazuri. Na hiyo kazi ndio ilikuwa hiyo moto, kama si hiyo moto wangekufa.
They now want the British Army together with the Conservancy to bear responsibility for ecological damage to the water catchment area.
An arm against the environment at whatever part of this world is an arm against humanity wherever we are. So we cannot be claiming immunity while we are destroying the real ecosystem that sustains the lives and livelihoods of thousands of people.
Just the other day, reports emerged that a British soldier killed a Kenyan lady, Agnes Wanjiru, back in 2012 and dumped her body in a septic tank at the Lions Court Inn Hotel in Nanyuki. The British Army Training Unit have been in Laikipia County for over a decade. Kimani Githuku, KTN News.
Now, 3 families from Nairobi have accused police of using excessive force against their kin. One family claims their 20-year-old Aldolf Miano was arrested by police officers from Pangani police station before his body was found in the city mortuary with gunshot wounds. Miano's autopsy report reveals that he died as a result of multiple injuries and gunshot wounds. Other victims, namely Alexi Mosese and Alex Boro, were apparently shot dead for allegedly taking part in criminal activities in Nairobi's Kawangware and Kariokor areas, respectively.
Bradhangu venye alifika city mortuary hata kukaa dakika 2, mtu wa pili kuonyesha walikuwa bradhangu akiwa na majeraha ya risasi, tortured, na tulimpata Wednesday. Sasa tulimemkosa 2 days. Sasa Wednesday ndio tulimpata city mortuary, na venye tulimpata city mortuary ukimwangalia hata we unaona tu alikuwa tortured, alikuwa amefichwa sijui ni kwa msitu ama ni wapi.
The officer drew a pistol na akashoot that young man
kwenye kichwa hadi ubongo ilimwagika pale kwa hiyo kiti. That place is still the same way because imefungwa up to date. So akamshoot kwa kichwa. That young man akauliza, hey, why are you doing that? So before aendelee kuconverse, I think that is when alikata roho.
Sasa huyu amepigwa risasi 13, unaweza ukashindwa hata ni nini. Na ule mtu akikuuliza ati alikuwa na lauti na buduki na hapa amemwekea panga. Sasa ukaona hapo kuna hawana vital information. Sisi kama watu wa familia anaweza akatuambia ambao tupate kuridhika. So hiyo ndio ile usuni tuko nayo.
Is there a hidden policy by the government to execute youth, particularly those from informal settlements? This is unacceptable, and we are placing this responsibility squarely on IPOA because they are the agency mandated to investigate police excesses and ensure those officers responsible are made to account.
And now to news making headlines in other parts of the world. A British court will consider this week whether Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks website, can be extradited to the United States on charges of hacking and theft. As Henry Ridgewell reports from London, new allegations have emerged in recent weeks that could have an impact on the judge's decision.
Supporters of Julian Assange staged protests outside a London court ahead of his two-day appeal hearing, which begins Wednesday. United States prosecutors appealed a January district court ruling that Assange should not be extradited because of concerns he would commit suicide in a maximum security US prison. That premise will be challenged by prosecutors, says lawyer Nick Vamos, a former head of extradition at Britain's Crown Prosecution Service.
What the US government have now done is come forward with a specific assurance about exactly how, where and in what condition he will be detained. So provided his medical condition and his risk of suicide hasn't changed, then you would assume that the US government have met the test that the district judge in the first judgment set them.
Other developments since the January ruling could affect the case. A former WikiLeaks insider turned FBI informer has said he fabricated evidence used by the prosecution. Meanwhile, Yahoo News last month published a story alleging that the CIA plotted to kidnap or even kill Assange in 2017. Yahoo says the story was based on interviews with 30 former US intelligence and national security officials.
It will be argued, well, if the CIA were willing to assassinate him, that's sort of one arm of the US government, then really you can't trust the other arm of the US government, the Department of Justice, to act fairly and to prosecute him in accordance with human rights standards and what we would consider to be a fair trial.
The CIA and US lawyers leading the extradition appeal have yet to comment on the Yahoo News story. Former CIA Director and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told the Megyn Kelly podcast that all actions taken were consistent with US law. In 2010 and 2011, Assange oversaw the publication by WikiLeaks of tens of thousands of diplomatic cables and military reports relating to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Assange says the leak exposed abuses by the US military, a main reason why supporters say the issue of press freedom is at stake.
And there is the huge issue of global media freedom and the way that this case could set a terrible precedent for any journalist, any publisher trying to expose the misdeeds and wrongdoing of government so that government can be held accountable.
Assange is being held at a London prison as he is considered a flight risk. He faces 18 US federal charges relating to allegations of hacking, theft of classified material, and the disclosure of the identities of US informants, which prosecutors say put their lives at risk. A verdict on the extradition appeal will likely take several weeks. Both sides can appeal the decision to Britain's Supreme Court, which could take several years. However, Supreme Court judges may rule against considering the case.
Okay, Zimbabwe police on Tuesday arrested 40 former freedom fighters who were protesting against poor pension earnings in Harare. Take a look. While Afghanistan is facing a severe food shortage with the winter coming, aid agencies say they are rushing to stave off crippling hunger and malnutrition. VOA's Ayesha Tanzim met with Afghani families struggling to feed their children.
A hungry child crying for milk, a common sight in today's Afghanistan. International aid agencies say more than half of the country's population, a record 22.8 million people, face acute hunger in the coming months. That includes millions of children.
Previously, when their father worked, we used to give these children a bottle of milk each, twice a day. Now both of them share one bottle of milk for the whole day. 2 bottles last 48 hours.
Everyone in this household, mother, father, son, and daughter, have lost their jobs. With no income, putting food on the table is a challenge.
It's been 3 weeks since we cooked a meal. We only eat dry bread. But if we eat it in the afternoon, we don't have anything for dinner. If we eat it for dinner, we don't have anything for breakfast.
4 decades of war has left the country destitute. Nearly 3/4 of the Afghan government's budget was supported by foreign funding. That funding stopped when the Taliban took over. The United States has also frozen nearly $10 billion of Afghanistan's assets. Now, the country is facing an economic meltdown. At a food distribution center in Kabul, set up by the World Food Programme, the lines are long.
WFP received 100 million, so that's allowing us now to get food into the country very quickly. But we still have a huge shortfall as we approach into winter. You know, we need another 100 million now before the end of the year and 300 million going into the beginning of 2022.
The situation has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and a severe drought, the second in 4 years. Many have lost their jobs. Many with jobs have not been paid in months. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced by conflict and drought.
I used to have food and clothes, but when I fled, I couldn't bring anything with me. Even my feet are injured.
Afghanistan is now among the world's worst humanitarian crises. The aid rations allow families like this one to have a decent meal, but not for long. Whatever help they're getting today will only last them a month. And with the winter coming, they don't know how they will survive the year.
Now, more than 60 young Iraqi girls from different religions and backgrounds take part in an 8-week taekwondo and leadership training in the town of Tal Kaif, north of Mosul, to learn self-defense and build confidence. All right, now and on that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. Have a fantastic day and enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Good
morning. My name is George, and I'm privileged to be your guide today. And welcome to our first morning drive. We are having a slow drive towards the dam for kayaking. So you feel free, it's entirely your drive. If you have any questions, keep them coming. And if you'd like me to stop for anything, just give a shout and I will stop. On the tables we have water bottles for you. A Korean Muge camp is an eco camp whereby we try to reduce the use of single-use plastic bottles. So we use these refillable water bottles. I would advise each and every one of you to keep pace. And we also have some hand sanitizers and service sanitizers. Yeah, we have an average of 100 elephants. We did 2 census last year, and one we got 98 and another one 108. So we put on average about 100.
So the Mugi Conservancy and Aquarians in particular allows you flexibility to experience this place in the way that you want to experience, whether it's walking with a dog, riding on top of a Land Cruiser, or kayaking at water level with elephants, an entire family of elephants. You can experience this place the way you want to experience, during day, during night, an incredible amount of flexibility to see the entire range of beauty that this place has to offer, and that's special and unique.
Welcome to Aquarians Mugi Camp, located in Mugi Conservancy in Laikipia County, Kenya. We are a proud member of the Magical Kenya Signature Experience. Come and become an Aquarian explorer.
This is KTN News.
Are you ready to beat your personal best? Nairobi's largest sporting event is back. The Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon 2021. Sign up for the physical marathon or virtual run. Choose the date you will run and the kilometers you will cover. And let's run as one from anywhere with friends, family and colleagues. Register now. All proceeds help Kenyan youth through Future Makers.
The Standard Chartered Marathon will be live on KTN Home on the 31st of October from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Nairobi City County Government NCCG, Nairobi Metropolitan Services NMS, and the Kenya Revenue Authority KRA hereby give notice to all land rates payers. Her Excellency the Deputy Governor NCCG, in collaboration with the Director General NMS, has approved 100% waiver on outstanding penalties and interest for those who will pay for all outstanding principal arrears between 1st October and 31st October 2021. To take advantage of the waiver, billing and payment for the amount due will be undertaken through the Nairobi Revenue System NRS. Once the account has been created, ratepayers should send their LR number or a copy of their latest land rates payment receipt and national ID or KRA PIN copy to landrateswaiver@kra.go.ke or call 0709 014 747 to provide the same details to get an NRS waiver bill. Alternatively, ratepayers can visit the following areas with the above documents to be assisted in both account creation and billing for the waiver. KRA offices at Times Tower's ground floor banking hall, waiver customer care desk at the sunken parking Aga Khan Walk, and NMS customer care desk at Green Park Bus Terminus, former Railways Club. All payments shall be made through the following channels, quoting the NRS bill number as your payment reference number. Cooperative Bank of Kenya, account name Nairobi City County KRA Revenue Collection Account, account number 011417094100000. Equity Bank, account name Nairobi City County KRA Revenue Collection Account, account number 1770279910476. Note: at the end of the waiver period, enforcement measures shall be initiated against defaulters for recovery of the principal, interest, and penalties of accrued land rates. For inquiries, contact us on 0709 014 747 or email nrbrevenueservices@kra.go.ke or visit KRA offices at Times Tower, ground floor banking hall. Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee. Nairobi City County, the city of choice to invest, work, and live in.
Kiulizia mwanahabari fulani ama mtangazaji fulani alienda wapi.
I trust all is good in this hood. You know how it is. You are with me, Edward Kwach. It is Spice Drive.
We had faces for radio.
Yaani anasema kuna face ya radio na face.
No, they're radio faces, by the way.
Ilikuwaje ndio kaitikia wito huo ukaamua kumtumikia Mungu?
Mimi nilianza kazi kama mwalimu.
Bwana Freshly, karibu sana kwenye makala ya Kwa Wapi. Wakenya wamekuwa wanaulizia jamani, baada ya Stella kurudi.
Hadithi ya Stella ni ukweli. Alikuwa rafiki yangu sana.
Siku hizi uko wapi na unajishughulisha na nini?
Order, very order.
Hodi.
Karibu.
Princess.
Yes, dear.
Hello.
Ay, Nyamalo.
Nyamalo amefika.
Yeah, God, karibu.
Asante.
Hakuna watu ambao wana bidii, wana akili timamu kama Wakenya.
Si mwingine ila ni Mheshimiwa Ekwe Ethuro. Timpad malo, beume.
Nikete mwana pe, toduweka manaka. Weka hapa, rudisha hapa na kubali.
Express visawa sawa. Sawa na Sawa Liquid Hand Wash inapatikana katika variant 3, original, strawberry na aloe vera. Sawa Liquid Hand Wash yenye harufu ya kuvutia, uhakikisha mikono yako inabaki kuwa laini. Bidhaa bora kutoka Pwani Oil Products Limited.
Sign up for the physical marathon or virtual run. Choose the date you will run and the kilometers you will cover. And let's run as one from anywhere with friends, family, and colleagues. Register now. All proceeds help Kenyan youth through future makers.
Express visawa sawa. Sawa na Sawa Liquid Hand Wash inapatikana katika variant 3, original, strawberry na aloe vera. Sawa Liquid Hand Wash yenye harufu ya kuvutia, uhakikisha mikono yako inabaki kuwa laini. Bidhaa bora kutoka Pwani Oil Products Limited.